Welcome to the Maria Heller Show, on the net since 2000 and still going strong. If you feel like you're not getting the real news, if you feel like you're not connected spiritually, you have found your home. Maria covers a wide range of topics as only a snarky New Yorker can. Straight up, no chaser. No censorship, no corporate sponsors, thus true freedom of speech. Your subscription gives you unlimited access as a member of the smartest audience on earth. Relax and enjoy the education. Now here's Maria.
Good morning, world. Maria here, alive and kicking. Welcome to The Bigger Picture with my friend, my co-host, Michael Reccia. And let me tell you, every one of his books is something that everyone needs to read, especially now, okay? TikTok is what I say when I make a lot of posts, especially environmental posts. And we are really on the clock, and people need to start paying attention. But more than that, know what to do. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Michael's latest book on the Joseph Communications is The Spaces Between, Unseen Forces That Shape Your Life. So I'm happy to have Michael back on the show. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Maria. How are you? It's great to be back.
I'm doing good. Listen, we're living in crazy days. And,
indeed, yes.
You know, as much as I send energy to the field, it's almost like it's bouncing it back like a boomerang.
Yes.
And, you know, when people are calling me, you know, whether they want, you know, a session with me or just to talk, what I'm finding is everyone is exhausted. I mean, they just tell me, especially light workers, they tell me that their souls are tired. And I find that a very interesting, you know, sentence. Your soul is tired, because believe me, my soul has been there too, plenty of times. I'm sure yours has as well.
Mine is comatose at the moment, Maria.
Mine is saying, "I'll get you, my pretty, for coming down here."
Yes, indeed. Yes, what were we thinking?
All right. Well, that's a big question I'll be asking myself when I'm out of here. I often tell people when I get back into spirit, I'm going to kick my own ass for coming down here.
Well, it seems so easy from that side, doesn't it?
Yes.
They say, well, you're going back. Oh, that's fine, you know.
Yeah.
And you're going to try and teach people. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, have a fun time doing that. Try to survive. It's like they dumped us on some reality show where we have nothing. Like, you know, I don't know if you have it in the UK, but here they have a reality show called Naked and Afraid. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but they drop people.
I haven't seen it, no.
They drop people naked in the middle of like a forest or something with very
sounds painful.
Right, with very rudimentary tools, and they have to try to survive. And it's usually a man and a woman, and
Right.
you know, their anxiousness, their survival instincts, their disgust. You know, I watch people get airlifted off the show. Not that I watch it regularly, because it's just too gross for me seeing them getting all covered with bugs and God knows what. But you know what? In a way, that's kind of how our souls fall down to this planet. It's like, okay, you fall down, we're going to take your memory away of who you are, and good luck. You know? Goodbye and good luck is what we get.
Yes, and you will be covered in bugs, but of a different kind.
Exactly. Well, you know, that's one of the topics in your book, one of the chapters, chapter 4. That's astounding, because it's so much of what I tell people, but the way you describe it is great. And the name of the chapter is Guess Who's Coming to Dinner?
Yes.
And people don't realize we're the food. So,
Yes.
interesting days indeed. But, you know, before
we're on the menu.
I know, we're on the menu. But before we get to that, you know, I wanted to ask you, because, you know, I've been kind of perplexed and asking Spirit myself. And it's like, I need to ask Michael, what's going on with the field? I mean, is it starting to collapse at super speed? I mean, what is happening? Because you see this is a worldwide insanity right now.
Yes, it is, and we're consolidating the field. We're making it more solid. We're making it our only point of view. We bought into materialism to such an extent, we pushed out the God within to such an extent that the field is all we're seeing, which goes back to one of Joseph's basic themes, which is that we need to have enough knowledge of there being something spiritual, a spiritual aspect to ourselves. In fact, that's all we are at core, to be able to get out of here. And now, in these times, it applies not just to getting out of here once we leave the physical body behind, but getting out of here in our mind and our viewpoint and our relationship to others whilst we're still here. It's ironic, we're not getting out of here during the day, and that's what's happening. We bought into this being all there is. And we bought into materialism being God. We need the new car, we need the new house, we need the new clothes. We exploit the planet, we don't care about the planet. And we're running out of energy because we're not putting any spiritual energy, any light into the planet. That's where we are at the minute. And the field is, as we've said before, having a field day, thinking it's a great old time. There is still time to do something. As I always say, if there wasn't time to do something, Joseph and the Soul Group wouldn't still be communicating with us. There'd be no point. But we have to do it now.
Exactly.
Did I tell you about the angel standing by the television, Maria?
No. Tell me about it.
We went on holiday a few weeks ago, and as usually happens when we go on holiday, we've got a very tiny television in the room. You've got to sit very close to it to be able to see it.
Oh.
And in addition to that, there's usually only one or two stations on this television. We can only get a couple of channels. And we were watching a young man who was traveling through Russia making a documentary and talking to specialists and experts about the state of the country. And he was talking to one expert about the permafrost melting and the consequences on the world. He was talking to another expert about the forest, the lungs of the world in Russia that were being cut down by unscrupulous business people to earn a quick buck. And then he was talking to another expert about the giant sinkholes that are appearing all over Russia. These things just drop like craters, hundreds of feet into the ground. So, at the end of that documentary, we changed channels and we watched a program about an ancient river that flows through Scotland and down into the UK. And at one point, the announcer was saying how puzzled they are because the salmon are disappearing. The salmon that for centuries and centuries have spawned and have gone upstream to this river in Scotland have disappeared. And as I was watching this terrible state of affairs across the world, an angel turned up next to the television. Now, usually angels have something to say, and it's not, I'm going to help you park your car.
Right.
And it's not, I'll tell you which boyfriend you should be with. And it's not who's going to win on the lottery. It is something of substance, or they don't turn up. And this angelic being turned up and simply looked at me. And there was a feeling of such sadness. And there was a resolve in the angel's face, as though to say, you haven't quite got to the point of no return, but you're pretty darn close. And we despair sometimes of what you're doing. And it was a very humbling experience, but expresses what is happening around the world at this point, and how close we are to disaster unless we do something about it.
Right, but then when you have people that come out and talk about that, whether they phrase it as climate change, the earth changes, weather manipulation, etc., to me, it all comes down to a message I was given in 1991. And, when I said to The Voice, I call it The Voice, what do you want me to tell the world? And it was one sentence. They said, it's simple. Live in a sacred manner or die.
Absolutely.
And when you look around, you see there is the lack of the sacred. People don't appreciate nor care for, tend to the earth, to Mother Earth, to the plants, to the trees, to the water, to the sky, to the animals. I was reading about a dam that was that they just created, and now they don't understand why the salmon aren't spawning in America. Well, you put a dam in their way.
Yes.
Humans don't take nature into consideration, realizing that without her, we're gone.
And that we are part of nature, and that the animals that we're so cruel to are a part of us. They are created by diva activity. They are of equal importance to us. We are such an arrogant species. We're so arrogant. We need feeding at the expense of animals. We need comfort at the expense of the world. We'll cut down the trees. We'll beat all the metal out of the earth as long as we get what we want today. And we can dispatch life because it doesn't mean anything if it isn't human life. We were shocked in the same hotel by, we had a wasp in our room, and we caught the insect in a glass. And you know how wasps get very, very bad-tempered, but we managed to get this insect out of the window. At breakfast the following morning, a wasp entered the room, and it was disturbing some of the guests, and it settled on the window. We were about to put a glass over it when the lady sitting next to us took off one of her shoes and killed it. So that lady on that particular day had decided that life was in her, it was up to her whether it would end or whether it would go on, and she decided, no, I'm going to kill you. I don't care for you. You've done nothing to me. You're not important. I am. You're disturbing guests. You die. When in a couple of seconds more we could have put a glass over that wasp, and we shouted out, no, don't kill it, but too late.
Right.
So I apologize to the insect, because had we got to you, we would have put you outside. And I apologize for human behavior.
Right. Well, you know, that's kind of interesting, because yesterday I went down to the valley, and you have to take quite the drive down the mountains and through the rivers, over the rivers and through the hills. And my granddaughter was with me, and my granddaughter's been a Reiki master since she's 7. She's in her 20s now. And we saw roadkill on the road. And what was amazing is, at the same second, both of us, we both winced, we both went, oh, and then we both Reiki'd the soul of that animal, as we drove by, because, I've taught her that that's how you can free the soul of an animal that got murdered, unexpectedly. To have that kind of respect for human life is there is none in America. There's very little respect for human life, let alone animal life. And explaining to other people that you make a decision every time you put a fork in your mouth is also a spiritual decision. And I know that upsets a lot of people. Every doctor I talk to says the one thing they don't want to talk to their patients about is their diet, because people get so angry. And I said, but even if you have a patient that's like 300 pounds, you don't talk to them about their weight or their diet or what they're putting in their bodies? And they said, no, we don't, because people get very defensive. So for me, I don't talk about that unless someone asks me about it.
The same here, yes.
There's no point, throwing pearls before swine and wasting my time and getting, somebody violently angry at me. But, everything we do during the day, we have a choice. It's either a sacred act or it isn't.
Yes, and to respect the oneness of all things, What the lady did to the wasp, she did to herself. The cruelty we cause to the animals and to the planet, we're causing to ourselves. We're all connected. There is only one thing. There is only the God within and without. There's nothing else. And we can deny it until we're blue in the face, but we are all the same thing.
Right.
We're all the same thing. As it says in the book, God only counts to one.
Well, that's always been a very hard concept for people to get. But, if people spent more time in nature, here in America, believe it or not, Michael, a lot of young people are afraid of nature, and they say that. They're afraid to be out in the woods. They're afraid to be out in the dark. They've developed a fear of nature, just like we were convinced that the sun was a bad thing for us. So the more disconnected people get through social media and their addiction to their gadgets, the less attached they are even to other human beings.
Yes.
So whatever this great experiment is, it's a failure.
Yes, it's amazing to see people, and I feel sorry for them, particularly the young, with their mobile phones. And you see that their thumbs are a blur. Their thumbs now are the most active parts of their body. And yet there are reports saying that they cannot train the next generation of surgeons because they don't have the dexterity in their hands due to them being on mobile phones all the time. And that's just one aspect of not being able to relate to the world in a positive way. The field gets to us through our technology. We can't break away from it, or many people can't break away from it. And they don't see that they are missing that nature that you're talking about. You see them walking down the street, and they don't know that they're walking down the street because they're on the phone all the time.
Right.
They don't look up, they don't look at the sky, they don't look at other people, so they're not connecting with other people. The technology is pulling us in.
Well, you
The
know,
technology is...
I forget
Sorry, Maria.
I forget which country it is in Europe. Maybe it's Germany, where they actually put their street lights and stuff into the sidewalks so people can see because they're always looking down at their phones.
My goodness.
I mean, what kind of world is this? You know, what kind of world is this? How did this all go so haywire just in my one lifetime? That's like the question I ask myself all the time. I've only lived one lifetime here this time. And I'm like, how did this change so much from when I was a little girl?
Yes, it has accelerated from a community-based society to an insular society. As you say, you cannot recognize the world now compared to the world that we had when we were children. And it's not nostalgia. It was a completely different world.
Oh, I know.
I remember when my mother was ill. She was in bed. And the teachers from my primary school came to look after her.
Yeah, that'll never happen today.
No, it wouldn't. Everybody in the street came to look after her. And if somebody was ill in the street, we would go and do their shopping for them, look after them if they were sick, and connect with people.
Right.
We're built to connect with each other. We're built to exhibit love to each other. And it doesn't happen. You're lucky if you know your neighbors now.
Right. Well, you know, and this may sound hard to believe to people listening to the show, but it was the same thing in Brooklyn, New York, when I grew up as a child. You know, I remember, first of all, it was extremely rare for someone to have heart disease or cancer when I was a kid. And I remember one woman's husband had gotten a heart attack, and he died. And everyone in the neighborhood took care of that woman and her children. Everybody knew everybody. You know, if we were all out, all us kids used to go out and play in the street, everybody knew everybody else's parents were watching everybody's kids.
Yes.
So, you know, when people say, oh, you New Yorkers, you're such nasty, close people, I'm like, you're so wrong. You know, I knew more of my neighbors in New York than I ever knew in Arizona. You know, in Arizona, everybody drives into their garage and you never see them again. And they have, you know, these big concrete walls between each house so you don't see your neighbor. So you're privately insulated. But, you know, growing up, you know, in the city, we had more physical connection with other human beings than we do now.
Yes. And you say good morning to people, or you try and make eye contact on a walk. I do here. It doesn't work.
Well, here's an interesting thing. We were out to dinner.
They will avoid looking at you.
Right. We were out to dinner, and my granddaughter is really simpatico, okay? She feels for everyone. She's like the ultimate empath. And as we were getting up from our booth, which abutted to another booth behind us, this woman, probably in her 30s, she got up to get up, but she must have slipped off her shoe, and she falls on the floor. My granddaughter turns around and says, let me help you. And she says, get away from me. I can take care of myself.
Oh, my goodness.
So I'm trying to teach my granddaughter the benefit of the Italian expression, fate do. And for people that are not Italian, what that means is mind your own business. Okay? Because she's so simpatico for everybody, and then she gets so hurt. And I said, you know what? Unless somebody asks for help now, you can't even offer it.
No.
So it's like, what has happened to the human race? You know, we can talk about animals being animals, but people are, I think, listen, Sun Bear taught me a long time ago that the two-legged animal is the most dangerous animal on the planet. And I can't argue that.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I want to get back to one more question for you.
Okay.
When we were talking earlier, talking about the permafrost, the forest cut down, the sinkholes, you know, I cover this stuff all the time because, as you know, I've been an environmentalist most of my life.
Yes.
Now, would you call that climate change? Do you think these people speaking about the destruction of Earth are some kind of setup? Are they trying to hoodwink people? I mean, how do you look at this movement of young people, which you may have seen in the news? I mean, by the
Yes,
millions,
indeed, yeah.
by the millions coming out in the street, demanding we take care of the Earth for their future. How would you describe it? Right. Would you describe it as climate change? I refer to it as the Earth changes, coupled with humans' ignorance.
I would describe it as the planet reacting to, again, it's down to oneness, and to us being an integral part of the planet. And we pour so much negativity, so much materiality into the planet, and we plunder it. We plunder it on all levels. We plunder it materially. We plunder it spiritually. We have no respect for it. We don't care. It's something that's there to serve us in most minds. And so the tension in the field builds up and builds up and builds up, and the planet erupts. And when something happens, for example, when there's a tidal wave or when there's an earthquake, we say, how could God possibly have done this to us? What kind of God is there? And we probably never thought of God prior to this. Why has God done this to us? He hasn't. We've done this to the planet. We've done this to ourselves. Again, we don't realize that our thoughts result in certain consequences. And our thoughts should be spiritually based, not materially based. And we can't continue. If I have a shopping bag and it's got certain items in it, I can only take so many items out of the bag before that bag is empty. And that's what we're doing to the earth. We don't respect it. We don't acknowledge that it's a spirit. We don't acknowledge, ultimately, that we, as the angelic beings that we were and still are, the angelic beings that we were before the time of the fall, created this place. Mm-hmm. We created this planet as somewhere where we could go as the spirit people we really are and experience, but not experience in this terrible, negative, plundering way, experience the beauty that the planet had to offer to us. Evolve spiritually and take back those experiences to the angelic host, not having harmed the planet, but having passed peacefully through it and absorbed the experiences it had to offer. We made the place. Right. Isn't that shocking? We made this place, and now we think, well, it's only an old home. What does it matter? You know, I'll be dead tomorrow. I can take what I want out of the planet today. And that's why we have such problems. We always operate spiritually, always, because that's what we are. So everything that you see around you is the consequence of thoughts that we've put in yesterday to create today. And behold the planet we're creating. Behold the world we're creating. Poor planet, as in poor animals, poor planet. How dare we treat the planet this way? The planet that selflessly allows us to live on a physical plane, that gives us the air that we breathe, that gives us the ground to walk on. How dare we treat it so shabbily? But isn't this how we treat everything at the moment?
Well, that's the truth. Listen, we're a throwaway society. You know,
yes,
nobody fixes anything. You know, I remember when I was a child, there were all kinds of fix-it stores, okay? Shoemakers, yes. Okay? No, you didn't just say, okay, this pair of shoes, my heels are worn down, I'm going to throw them away. You actually used to go into, you know, a shoe repair and get new heels put on the shoes. Yeah. You know, you're hard-pressed today to even find a shoe repair store.
Yes.
You know, and I'm not just, you know, singling out shoes. I mean, we do the same thing with appliances. You know, everything's throwaway society. And now we throw away people. You know, here in America, we have children sitting in cages in concentration camps. And dreadful. Yet, you know,
dreadful.
Right. And then every American will say we're a Christian nation.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Yeah. I know that you were raised Catholic.
Yes.
What's your definition of the word Christian?
Oh, that's a difficult one, Maria, because as you know, I'm not Catholic anymore. Right. I abandoned my Catholic upbringing at the time when my marriage, many, many years ago, was falling apart. And I went to see the priest, thinking that I would find some comfort and some direction. And he looked at me and said, do you want me to write a letter? And it was like a scene from a film, Maria. I remember walking out into the grounds of the church and out through the gate and determining that I would never set foot in a Catholic church again except for births, marriages, and deaths when I would be at, I would be invited by some other family. Now, Christian is following the teachings of Jesus. And Jesus said, look, everything I'm doing, folks, you can do. I've come here to tell you what you're capable of. Everything I do, you can do. Not only that, you can do it better than me. So what did we do once he'd left the earth? We said, let's build a religion around this. And this can suit the needs of the Roman Empire of the time. So let's build a religion. Let's pop in certain truths in inverted commas, and let's control the people. And then at certain times during history, from Christ's time, from Jesus' time, we've rewritten the Bible completely. But there are still many souls out there who believe word for word that the Bible is correct, word for word, despite the evidence that it's been rewritten, word for word.
Rewritten many times.
I can't remember what I said last week.
Right.
And yet, Jesus' words were written down some 80 years after he went.
Right.
80 years.
Right.
And then we say, they're word for word. Word for word. We must trust this, it's word for word.
All right. Today you can't even trust a digital recording to be legitimate.
That's right. That's right. So the words of Jesus, the basic message of Jesus, what he's saying is exactly Joseph's message. It's exactly the same message as all those advanced souls that come to try and show us a different way.
Right.
But of course, the religion around it controls people.
Well, right. Well, for me, listen, I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, but that was a long time ago. But when people ask me, are you a Christian? I say yes. And the reason I say yes is because I live my life in a sacred manner.
Yes.
To me, I tell people constantly, Christian is a verb. It's not a noun.
Yes.
That to me is the easiest explanation. It's what do you do at the end of the day? What did you do all day? Review your day and see if you lived your life in a sacred manner, because the days are growing short. I mean, anybody with eyes in their heads can see this. And, that's what, your books teach us. We have to prepare. What are we to do is what people are not asking. What are we to do on a spiritual level?
Yes.
And again, it's that disconnected from the fact that we are spiritual beings. That's where the disconnect starts.
First of all, we've got to acknowledge that we are spirits. We've moved so far away from our spiritual core that we don't even think about these things. I mean, how can we as human beings pass through a lifetime without considering life and death, without considering what we are, without digging and searching to see if there is something more? How can we do that? How can we be so blinded by material life that we have no time to investigate spirituality? It's not that I'm telling you anything or Maria's telling you anything. It's just surely at some point in your life you've got to dig deeper for your own information, for your own point of view. Don't you want to know? Don't you want to know if there is something after death? And if there is something after death, don't you want to know a better way of living? Are you happy? The people that I see on the streets today aren't happy. You very rarely see a smile on someone's face. They all look burdened, and as you say, Maria, they all look worn out. Do you want to be like that? Or is there another way? Yes, there is another way, but you've got to discover it. It's as Joseph says, our mission is to get this information to people. What they do with it is then entirely up to them. It's
Absolutely.
not a cult, it's not a religion, but it is a different look at life if you take it on board. But you've got to do something. You've got to do it for yourself. You've got to discover about life after death. You've got to discover about spirituality. Work at it. Meditate. Bring light into this world. If you see the world and you say it's terrible at the moment, what are you going to do about it? What you can do about it is bring light energy from your heart center out into the world to change things. Each person listening to this is as powerful as the next, but either powerful in a negative way or in a positive way, dependent on their choices. dependent on how they approach the earth and each other, dependent on the work that they put into changing the earth and to creating enough illumination around those who are materially based for them to eventually see that there is a different way. And it's not about metal, and it's not about rubber, and it's not about jewels, and it's not about bricks. It is about the spirit within. It is about us being eternal, immortal beings. And it's about us returning this earth to what it once was, which was a paradise when we created it. And we're a far cry from that now, aren't we?
Oh my God, for sure. Listen, I have a lot of young people that, want to have children. And I tell them I don't recommend it. And I refer them to your work, where you say it best. Why would you take a perfect soul and bring them down to this hell? You look at these young children, regardless of how they want to make this a political football. But when you look at these young children like Greta, and should they only put her out in front? But there's a lot of children of many different colors saying the same thing that aren't getting the press she's getting. They're fully aware that this is not a planet that's going to give them the life they want when they're our age.
Yeah.
And we need to do everything we can to tell these children, lead and we'll follow, because obviously the older generation hasn't been able to do anything.
Absolutely. And to give them, to nurture them with our encouragement, but also with our light. To surround them, we know what they look like, they're in the news, to hold their images in our heart minds during our times of meditation and send out unconditional light and illumination to them to give them the power that they need to do the job that they've come here to do. It's great for us to say, that they're doing a good job. Let's help them to do that job. Let's support them. Let's illuminate them. Let's let them grow spiritually to do even more good work. But again, we've got to put something in. You've got to put something in to take something out.
Absolutely.
So we should be holding these children in our thoughts, in love, on a daily basis to strengthen them and see that they are protected and able to do the right things and say the right things to make a difference here.
Absolutely. And I do. And I'll tell you what, I send them protection as well, because they need to be protected from the dark forces and bloodsucker feeders, whatever you want to call them, ticks, psychic vampires. The list goes on and on. Because, you and I, obviously, maybe me even more so than you, Michael, have obviously been protected through our whole lives, or for sure they would have taken me out a long time ago. And I'm very appreciative of the protection around me. But these children need it even more, because to me, this is the generation we've been waiting for.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. And it's the last chance saloon, isn't it?
Absolutely.
If this generation doesn't make it,
it's
then
over.
No generation will make it for millions of years.
Exactly.
Until we've sorted the earth out again and back we come to repeat the dance,
right.
Which we don't want.
Oh, God, never come back. Never come back. Michael and I are going to take a short break, and we'll be right back, so stay with us. Hi, this is Maria Heller. If you're enjoying this show, please consider listening to the rest of it, along with hundreds of other hours of education, by a small subscription on my site. Get over to meria.net, meria.net. You are the only thing that supports this show. There's no corporate control, and there's plenty of education on site. So please consider either a subscription or a donation to keep the work going. There are too many alternative voices out there that are being silenced because of lack of support. So if you don't want MSM to be the only mind-controlling news out there, please consider supporting the people that support you, and help us all save something for the future for our children. Thank you so much.